Mali ya Mkenya ikivamiwa, hata hizo mashamba zenyu tutazivamia, na wenye hawana mashamba wapate mashamba Kenya hii. Musifikiri ati wananchi wa kawaida ndio watapoteza mali. Even you will pay a price if you continue to instigate violence and bloodshed in this country. And that is my message to none other than Uhuru Kenyatta, the sponsor, sole sponsor, singular financier of Azimio, and the mercenary that is Raila Odinga.
It appears these activities are funded. The demonstration are funded. So I'm going to take the liberal view that the goons are also funded. So what do we call people who fund goons?
Gooners.
Gooners. It's not funny, but it's funny.
Hey, Eric didn't even miss a beat.
He wouldn't. Sheesh.
You know,
what do you call people who fund goons? Perpetrators of violence. Mass destruction. Perpetrators of mass destruction.
If somebody causes mayhem, destroys property, and that person is charged in a court of law.
Yep.
Now the person who's enabled that person. Remember, our laws are fairly interesting. If you are found with stolen goods, this phone is not yours. You can have paid for it, but somebody lost that phone or it was stolen from them.
Yep.
But
the penalty for you, you who has the stolen good, is worse than the person who supposedly stole it. Yeah. So now, in the absence of the so-called funder, then you don't have these activities.
You don't have all these things.
Exactly. So
Yep.
This is exactly well. Look, you can extrapolate and you can look at it at a higher degree or whatever else. But we look at cases of Felicien Kabuga out of Rwanda. He did not lift a machete. He did not go out into the streets and rape anybody. But it is alleged that he funded these things to happen. And so he was even more guilty, quote unquote, than the person who carried out the act because he put the money behind it. Without his money, those atrocities would not have happened.
Yep.
That's just the truth.
That's true. Those who are doing it, okay, if we go by, this is where an Okondo moment comes back. Remember Okondo moment?
I remember Okondo.
I will tell you about the Okondo moment.
Yes, and
Okondo was a minister.
Habenga Okondo. He's one of these fellows who had a knack and a tendency for saying
things.
Genuinely irresponsible things. When you open his mouth, you wonder, now
what's going to come out?
Yes. Now, there's a gentleman called Alexander Muge. Alexander Muge was an ACK bishop of Eldoret. ACK bishop goes to Busia for some function or the other, and it is reported that Okondo said something to the effect that he would not survive. I am paraphrasing really liberally here. Eric, do you remember what was actually said then?
I don't remember what he had. Bishop Alexander Muge was vocal. Remember what we were talking about?
Extremely vocal.
So he was one of those vocal clerics and speaking about democracy, speaking for the push to democracy, liberalization, openness
and
of society.
criticizing the then president when he needed
directly. Okay? So Okondo had said something like he had warned Muge against going.
He had warned him against going
and said if anything happens
he intimated that some harm may come to him.
Yes.
That he intimated. Then you know what happened? There's an accident. Muge dies. Okondo resigned.
Oh, wow.
Yes, he did.
Because you had said, if you come here, something could happen to you.
And then
something
it was an accident.
Happens.
It was an accident.
A road accident. Now, you couldn't really directly pin Okondo to the accident.
No. It was far away from where Okondo was, but the accident happened. And Muge died.
Speculation then was rife as to whether he had something to do with it.
Okondo resigned.
Yep.
And I think his political life essentially came to an end.
That was it. Now, over the last couple of days, the leader of majority in the National Assembly, who is also the Kikuyu MP, Kimani Ichung'wah, had said something.
He did.
Sending a direct message to Uhuru Kenyatta and naming him by name. And saying that also, your properties, the way other people's properties are being, your properties could also, something towards that line.
Right.
And then yesterday happens.
What do you think is going to happen?
They're going to attribute it directly to that thing that you said.
Believe me. And then they will add some.
But they said, you said it was going to happen. And it is happening. So you've set it up. 1 + 1 is 2 in the minds of people when something like that is said so publicly. And then with the anger that is clear from that clip that he was speaking with.
Yep. So when you connect something like that and then you ask yourself, so who is this who funds Goons? You know, Kimani Ichung'wah should be recording a statement.
Yep. In fact,
what happened?
If we were to be fair, anyone during this space who has uttered anything that is close to incitement, not incitement, close to, should be called in and told, sir, madam,
Kuja,
please come and. But the unfortunate thing is, the narrative that we also see is that the police seem to have taken a few steps back. And one doesn't see their presence in the Northlands. One doesn't. So one asks, so if people invade someone's farm, is that not a matter that should be investigated by the police?
This is in which they did.
Yes.
Destruction of property.
It is.
Stealing.
Not just destruction, this is wanton destruction of property. But the real problem is, what is this narrative? The narrative is that the dispossessed have now come of their own and they are taking action. And they are not waiting for reparations. They are taking it in their hands. And whatever they believe was taken from them, they're taking it back. Okay. Now, when such a narrative is spun, the real problem is, where will it end?
Absolutely. This is it.
where will it stop?
Yes. What do you think all this sets in motion?
Yeah.
Okay. So it means, if Uhuru Kenyatta's property, Uhuru Kenyatta and his family, if their property can be attacked, and that's supposed to be considered a well-secured family, anybody who has an even modicum of wealth, you start asking yourself, what stops somebody who thinks that they are poor and have too much? What stops them from coming to my compound and invading it? If you're talking about a message, a narrative that spreads fear, this is it.
Yeah.
And it's genuine fear.
I see it in a different way, though, City.
Yes.
I see this, and I see that, that narrative that started coming out immediately. Oh, now if people can invade Uhuru's land, what would that imply? What would that mean? Where would this stop? And I remember about 2 years ago, the same kind of narrative being spread. Remember, Hustler-Dynasty narrative. And then the conversation was twisted into, you people, when you're talking about hustler, do you know what that means? It's going to ignite a class war in this country. We started seeing some border people reacting violently against motorists in their vehicles, and some vehicles were torched, and it was spreading the same way. And we said, come on.
You see where I was going with
there are thugs who are behaving in a certain way. Those are thugs that are behaving in a certain way. Yes, yesterday's event of people who are clearly being organized by somebody, going into Uhuru's land and stealing, and then going home and lighting up some fires, if they were the ones who were involved in lighting the fires, and then they went home. Yeah, it could head in that direction, but I'd pause before I start even driving that narrative of, now the meek are starting to rise up against the wealthy.
Actually,
it's not yet there.
No, it has started. Because the same fear that is likely to grip people who have possessions is the same fear that businessmen who are in town have when they hear Maandamano. Because they see a situation where the shops can be vandalized, they see a situation where they can lose what it is that they earn a living with. That is the juxtaposition that I was driving at.
Exactly. Yes. And because I've never had you juxtapose it before. That's what I'm saying. This one, just because one farm has been invaded by a bunch of 50 people who have taken away maybe about 100 sheep, should not start that conversation. Because we don't talk about it. We don't see it that way when goons come and invade somebody's shop in the CBD and cut away, or when goons are recorded on clip saying kama unauzanga maji tutakuja kesho tukunywa maji.
Not only
you don't
that,
see it as
if you
somebody who's running a
I'm
business.
going to live in your house rent free. It's the same narrative. That is why I began by saying there is nothing here that can escape condemnation, because anything that disenfranchises a citizen of this country has to be condemned and has to be spoken of and said the way it does not matter what their station is in life.
Yep.
Because this is a person who's going about their business peacefully and they are being invaded. Your shop is being vandalized. You are doing your business. You have not wronged anyone. You are just plying a trade. That's it.
Yep.
You are driving. You have not caused any harm. Someone stones your car.
Yep.
They are journalists just doing their jobs, gathering information. Your vehicle is stoned. You are threatened. Now, you see, I am looking at all these things not in isolation, and I always look at history and how things which eventually become terrible they began innocuously. You're wondering, but this thing the other day was just a small thing.
It only takes a spark, man.
Yes, and I'm saying no.
It.
Before it gets there, I am saying this is a problem. Alarm bells are ringing. This thing has to be stopped immediately, because the likelihood of it escalating and what it will bring with it is something no one wants to deal with.
And it will be unmanageable.
I agree. I used the example of a supermarket that was raided in Tasia last week as my starting point. That person who's operating a business in Tasia, that person who has employed people in Tasia, and then people come into their supermarket
and take everything.
And they take everything.
I mean, surely.
And is left without a business. He has to fire people. And these are ordinary people.
He has to start from
have
scratch.
families who are depending on them.
Man,
that is a problem.
These aren't things that you can look the other side on and say, none of these things are good. It doesn't matter who is perpetrating it, who is funding it. None of it is good.